Iamblichus explains through the Egyptian priest, or perhaps it is the priest himself explaining, we probably will never know, that all things proceeding from unity must forever bear within themselves the seed of unity. That unity itself stamps with what Beni calls the signatura rerum, the great seal of likeness. That nothing can proceed from unity that is not itself a unity. Therefore, according to this system, all beings proceeding from primordial being partake inwardly and eternally of unity, and likewise subsist in and forever remain within the body of all circumscribing essential unity. Also, Iamblichus tells us that the proper and least, rather the most proper and least erroneous definition of the unity of unities, the principle of principles, is that it is the one and the good. It is the one because by unity man bestows the supreme sense of his own power to bestow honor. As his own consciousness and his own nature instinctively perceives the oneness to be the most honorable, to be the most ancient, to be the most inevitable. And by oneness or unity, he bestows the attribute or title of totality. Therefore, totality as one is the supreme being. The Egyptian then says that the term the good is peculiarly appropriate also inasmuch as it is the inevitable and natural instinct of all creatures to desire the good, to seek the good, and gradually through the unfolding faculties and powers which they gradually come to possess, to serve the good, to demand or require the light of virtue, and to honor the gods by the performance of that which is good. Therefore, by the one is expressed the nature and root of being, and by the good, the eternal, everlasting, never-ceasing yearning of all life for the experience of that which is its own ultimate, the eternal subsistence within the substance of the good. That all things that may be good, that man may be in himself good, and through his own goodness make good the world. And that when he achieves these ends, he is at the same time stating his highest religious conviction concerning the one, because he instinctively assumes that the great desire of the one, as expressed through creation, is for the realization, manifestation, and total fullness of the good. Therefore, the one moving into activity in any form moves by virtue, and that all the works of the one are good, and all the creations of the one are in themselves good, and that therefore the gradual revelation of good is the final revealing of the one in all the states of human society. In this story, therefore, in the development of their level of theurgy, the Neoplatonists emphasized that the great art, the mysterious wisdom revelation which they sought, was not one thing, not one attainable mystery, but was a series of reversals of the involutionary processes by which greater and greater separateness became the burden of human life. And that by reversing this process, man gradually united the various elements and powers of his own nature. As Porphyry and also Sallust, and to a degree the Emperor Julian points out, that there is as yet no unity in man's sensory perceptions themselves. The eye sees with one purpose, the ear hears with another. Man cannot control his own faculties. He cannot focus them upon a one-purposedness Therefore, it is perhaps a difficult but necessary thing for him to learn that all of these sensory perceptions are the servants and instruments of an apperceptive power superior to themselves. For as Plotinus points out, unity is always achieved upon a level superior to the diversity. In order to bring things together, in order to circumscribe or bring things within pattern, the individual must transcend their separateness and from a superior state of awareness gather them in. He cannot gather them in directly upon the level of the confusion in which they are separated. This power to gather them in depends, therefore, upon a degree of theurgical insight that is greater than the diversity at any given moment. To achieve this theurgical insight, rationality is not invoked, nor is knowledge regarded as the solution. The solution is always through the experience of the superior. Consequently, the contemplative or mystical disciplines of Neoplatonism begin to assert themselves. The discipline is, to use our words, more simple words almost, is to relax into the acceptance of the real, recognizing that diversity is essentially a state of knowing or a state of not knowing. That diversity for man is a condition arising from his own lack of insight. The primary problem is not that he shall increase in insight, but that he shall no longer increase in failure of insight. In other words, it is not so much in this concept that he grows as that he ceases to resist growth. Not so much that he knows more, but rather that he begins to experience that which is eternally available in knowing. These terms, even as the old books themselves tell us, very soon become exceedingly complicated, inasmuch as the appropriate name for an experience cannot be found. Once it is experienced, it needs no name, and when it is not experienced, it is useless to name it. Consequently, the problem of the true degree of experience can only be approximated intellectually, and the intellectual approximation is not the attainment of it. The attainment of it lies in the theurgical concept that it must be lived. It must completely and totally possess the being. And the power of man to possess this insight lies not essentially in himself, but in the archetypal eternity of oneness, which is at the root of him and within which he exists. Therefore, man's eternal pattern of growth arises from the inevitable impulse of diversity towards its own reunion. And man is on a flowing universal stream that is moving inevitably in this direction. If man resists this motion, he is miserable, he is sick, he is disordered. If great collective parts of mankind resist this motion, they are inevitably destroyed thereby, or at least frustrated and injured. It is therefore the resistance to that which is true or real which is regarded as the greatest handicap. And in the theurgical part of this mystery, the disciple is taught that if he does not prevent unity, he will experience it. Perhaps that is the nearest way in which I can put it into the words of the original concept as it is given. If the individual does not stand in the way of experience, but is simply quietly receptive of reality, the archetypes move through him. He experiences them, he knows them because they are of himself. And as in the paragraph which I read, he no longer takes certain things for granted or presumes or assumes or believes. These things move through him when he does not prevent their motion. In our world, however, we are inclined to prevent motions, and it was not so different in the days of Socrates, because the individual, in order to not resent or prevent motion, has to have a certain attitude toward the problem of growth. This attitude lies in the recognition that there is no obstacle but the self, and that all other so-called obstacles are excuses. That the motion of the individual for totality is a completely internal and eternal motion. That it need not be conferred by one upon another because it is equally present in all things. And as the Egyptian tells us a little later, the stamp of universal or divine being as totality is present in everything from the greatest to the least throughout space. That there is no being, no creature, no existence, which in its essential nature does not possess unity, and in possessing unity possesses the potential of experiencing total existence. They held on the religious level that the greatest possible good was to discover the oneness, the complete indivisible wholeness of all human religion. That all religions, great and lesser, enlightened and unenlightened, represented degrees of the human quest for totality, for wholeness, for escape from otherness into the sphere of reality. Therefore, their absolute patience with all religion, and at the same time, their very sincere and definite desire to assist the release of the highest ethical and moral principles within these different religious groups. And I think perhaps it can be also summarized in the approved definition of mysticism as it is known in the classical world and in the modern world of mature philosophical thinking. And that is, mysticism is the belief or the conviction of the availability of the presence of the divine, and that the individual, seeking within himself and unselfishly and impersonally desirous and solicitous of inner instruction, will receive it, and that this instruction is possible because of the omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniactivity of the divine power, which is without boundary or limitation, and is the supreme or tremendous unity, and is the tremendous archetypal impulse behind all creatures seeking wholeness and seeking to return again, like Ulysses, to their own far distant native land.
The drama that is unfolding in Ukraine at this very moment questions the very notion of humanity. The dignity of man is being called into question through the voluntary aggression of civilians and the extinction that are multiplying everywhere on the territory of our country. What is happening in the heart of Europe touches the heart of all the inhabitants of our planet, who love justice and values of goodness, regardless of their region or religion. I expressly appeal to the world's spiritual leaders to take a stand and assume that moral function that is incumbent upon them, and to proudly assume the responsibility of their religions for peace. Thus, I want to turn into His Holiness Pope Francis, Ahmed Mohammed Ahmed El Taib, Dalai Lama, Chief Rabbi of Israel, David Baruch, Lau and Patriarch Kirill, the first, and invite them to come to Kyiv to show their solidarity with the Ukrainian people, to show their compassion, and to join together in a spirit of harmony that my country and the whole world needs. Let us make Kyiv the capital of humanity, spirituality, and peace.
Unity is our key for freedom.